Welcome to this first episode of Behind the Scenes with me, Sandra Frilund. Well, I will start with the topics of pets. In this episode, I thought I would talk about something that is called Seizure-Alert dogs, which I think is so important and very interesting. There are already so many different types of service dogs, but just this type I didn't know too much about. So I thought, I need to check this out a bit. So this is a little bit of all the things I found on that subject. Seizure alert dogs save humans with early warnings. Over the last decade, a new kind of service animal has emerged. Service alert dogs warn people with epilepsy of an oncoming attack minutes, sometimes hours, before it occurs. This allows the person time to take seizure blocking medication, get to a safe place, or call for assistance. How dogs detect an oncoming seizure in a human is a mystery. Some trainers and researchers think they detect subtle changes in human behavior or scent before an episode occurs. There are no scientific studies, however, to prove these theories. Trainers also believe the behavior is not breed, age, or gender specific in dogs. Seizure alert dogs are born with this remarkable ability. This sets them apart from other types of service animals. This is very encouraging and very fantastic, basically. I also found in an article about this a story about a woman called Dana Jacobs of Missouri, and I would like to read a little bit about it. It's called Second Chance at Life. After Donna Jacobs suffered a stroke at age 42, she began having seizures. I lived as a recluse for almost 4 years, afraid to go anywhere, said Jacobs. That all changed when she adopted a 7-week-old puppy named Petra, from the local animal shelter. The Rottweiler German Shepherd mix canine started alerting about Jacobs' seizures when it was 6 months old. The dog headbutts Jacobs behind the knees about 20 minutes before a seizure episode. This gives Jacobs time to find a safe place to lay down and wait for the episode to pass, usually within 5 to 15 minutes. During a seizure, Petra stays with Jacobs, giving her a sense of confidence and safety. Thanks to her service dog, Jacobs feels she has been given a second chance at life. She now works as a marketing director for a computer company and is an advocate for people with disabilities. Well, isn't this great news? Because sometimes nature just gives us humans what we need, not what we want specifically. And if you can't really train dogs to become seizure alert dogs, but it's given to them by birth somehow, it's really amazing and fantastic. And, it's good that they are here to help us and to warn us, those of us who have this seizure episodes. So I think it's really fantastic. Yeah. Well, next topic, crimes. Well, in this section, I was thinking about talking a little bit about a very specific homicide case where a cat was the key to the crime being solved. The cat's name is Snowball. Maybe you have heard about this and knows about what happened, but I was so fascinated by this that animals in general and pets, specifically, would become such a part such an important part of the murder mysteries way to be solved that I had to talk about this. Well, this murder case is about a woman called Shirley Duguay. And it says, and I have put this in a very short context, so I don't have to read everything. Anywho, Shirley Ann Duguay of Prince Edward Island was a Canadian woman who went missing in 1994 and was later found dead in a shallow grave. Among the most compelling pieces of evidence in the case was a leather jacket covered in Duguay's blood and over 24 white feline hairs. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police investigators recall that during a previous interview with the estranged husband, Douglas Beamish, that he had a white cat named Snowball. The detectives confiscated the cat and drew blood, in which they intended to use DNA fingerprinting to compare it to the DNA found in the white hairs from the jacket. But they found that no one in the world had done this before. After contacting a laboratory specializing not in forensics but in the study of genetic diseases, detectives and scientists were able to develop a method in which to test the feline DNA. The test revealed that the hairs did come from the cat. Beamish was subsequently convicted for the murder of his wife. The forensic science of testing cat and dog hairs has been firmly established and studied, but it was an unknown science until the Duguay case. Convicted of second-degree murder, Douglas Beamish is serving a life sentence in an Ontario prison. His request for parole in 2013 was denied. Well, I saw actually this episode on both the forensic files and on the New Detectives, and since I am fascinated of cats especially, I think this is sort of poetic justice that a human gets brought down by a small cat. This is fantastic, yes. And I really don't think that Mr. Beamish ever would have believed that he would be caught and brought down by his own cat. This is, wow, this is fantastic. Maybe he has regretted getting that cat many, many times since he was convicted and put in jail. Anywho, that is it about crimes in this episode. Now let's get to something completely different. Mental health. And in this section I will today talk about PTSD and depression. Two subjects that is talked about a lot, but I don't really think that people know that much. Well, maybe those of us who have experienced it, but not maybe people in general. So, all right, PTSD. The first time I came in contact with the word PTSD was after my first military foreign service in Bosnia-Herzegovina back in 1996. I think it was kind of new back then, at least in Sweden, but nowadays everybody seems to be talking about it. So, what exactly is PTSD then? Well, according to Wikipedia, it states, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is a mental disorder that can develop after exposure to a traumatic event, such as sexual assault, warfare, traffic collision, child abuse, or other threats on a person's life. Symptoms may include disturbing thoughts, feelings, or dreams related to the events, mental or physical distress to trauma-related cues, attempt to avoid trauma-related cues, alterations in the way a person thinks and feels, and an increase in the fight or flight response. Well, in the context I first heard about it, it was in a warfare or in a war zone situation. At first, I didn't think too much about it, since I thought, well, I have it all under control and nothing strange will happen. And for a while, after I got back from Bosnia, nothing strange did happen. But then all of a sudden, when I was out walking in Stockholm City one day, a moped backfired with a large boom as a result. And not thinking about it, I reacted by taking cover as I would in a war zone, with people staring at me a little funny. Well, I quickly pulled myself together and kept on walking. Since then, I continue to experience sudden small flashbacks as soon as I hear bangs in my surrounding that's not supposed to be there. But on the other hand, when I see or hear an emergency vehicle, I react with calm and a matter-of-fact response, which is kind of interesting, since it is then that everybody else seems to get panicked. Very strange, but I do know what's up and down, so to speak. I don't get confused about things, but people can have very serious symptoms and maybe not know that they're actually back in a friendly country. So it's very different to how people react and respond to trauma. About depression, well, I am going to read a little bit about an article I found in the American Psychiatric Association's webpage, and that says, among other things, that depression is a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. Fortunately, it is also treatable. Depression causes feelings of sadness and or a loss of interest in activities you once enjoyed. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems and can decrease your ability to function at work and at home. Depression is different from sadness or grief. The death of a loved one, loss of a job, or the ending of a relationship are difficult experiences for a person to endure. It is normal for feelings of sadness or grief to develop in response to such situations. Those experiencing loss often might describe themselves as being depressed, but being sad is not the same as having depression. The grieving process is natural and unique to each individual and shares some of the same features of depression. Grief and depression can coexist. For some people, losing someone or something or being a victim of a physical assault or a major disaster can lead to depression. When grief and depression co-occur, the grief is more severe and lasts longer than grief without depression. Yes, well, when it comes to these topics, both PTSD and depression, I have some thoughts and opinions about them. And it is not read knowledge from books or something, but lived experiences. So, right now there is a lot of talking about mental health, and that is certainly true and good. It's a good thing to do. But what is not said in this context is that it is not always so good to talk about anything with anyone at any time, because you never really know everything about another person, even if it happens to be a family member, close friend, or partner. There is always something that we all keep to ourselves, and that can be a trigger for a reaction that we have not foreseen knowledge about or even know about. Some people do not think about this at all. but just shouts it out and expect that everyone who hears can handle the information that comes. But this is not always the case. In my own experience, I have encountered three major negative reactions, but certainly there is also others that I did not notice. And they are: one, revenge, that the person I tell about the trauma to wants to revenge on my behalf. Two, escape, the person can't handle the knowledge and wants to leave, go away, desert you, whatever, escape from the situation. Three, fear, the person does not know how to behave. And that's kind of difficult. However, there are those people who can handle such information, but I would say that it is far from everyone. Sometimes you probably have to think before you talk, because traumatic information that is spread uncontrollably, as if you shouted it out through a megaphone, can have negative and unforeseen consequences that you may later regret. Another example of carelessness I can take from my everyday life. I often meet an acquaintance who I do like, but when he is in a bad mood or wants to annoy people just because he thinks it's funny, he often utters harsh, foul, and very hurtful words. In his world, there is no danger because he just wants it out and then he's good with it afterwards. But how do we others feel then when this happens and those of us who is nearby and hear it? Well, for my part, I usually start to feel pretty bad, sad, and depressed because it triggers things from the past. But I keep it to myself because I know that if I were to open up about it right there and then to him, he would just put in the next gear and not care about it any further. Maybe because he has his own issues, I don't know. Others just leave the place without saying much more. So, from that, one can conclude that it's not always good to just shout everything out uncontrollably, but it is better to think before you act. And yeah, that's my own thoughts about it. And you can see that especially in some newspaper articles that some very famous people are just talking and talking and talking about things that maybe should be, really thought about before they talk. Because when they talk in TV shows and newspapers and whatnot, they are not, they don't know how people react. It's like one way communication. They just shout it out through a megaphone and expects everyone to have nice emotions and nice reactions to it, but it can actually backfire quite a bit, and it's not always a good thing to do. It's good to talk about it, and you should talk about it, but it should be maybe with a therapist or maybe with people who can handle it, and within a room or a setting that is maybe a controlled setting, not from TV shows or whatever. And yeah, so some people are very good at controlling these things, and some people not so good. And I don't think I have to say what I'm thinking about right about now, because there is someone out there who is actually shouting it out like in a megaphone, and he is very famous, and I don't think it's a very good idea, even though I think his intentions are good and that he really don't want to hurt anybody per se. but I think that he might be hurting people without really knowing it. Anyways, this is it for this first episode. It's about 20 minutes long, and I hope you will join me in the next episode of Behind the Scenes with me, Sandra Frilund. Thank you for listening, and see you again next time. Bye bye.